Today we're reacting to How I Escaped My Cult, episode 2, and this one's about Angel's Landing. Instead of trying to gain thousands of followers, this cult leader kept it small, just a few people he could manipulate for life insurance money.
And it really makes you think, is that actually so different from what we've seen in closed-off high-demand religions? Sure, the motives might look different on the surface, but the control and the manipulation, that's something we are all too familiar with. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was raised in a family with 4 moms and 35 kids. We were members of the FLDS Church, which is a polygamous group run by their prophet Warren Jeffs, who is now serving a life sentence in prison.
I was raised mainstream LDS in Utah. Sam and I have been married for 10 years, and we have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. Today is a little unique. This Angel's Landing episode was very different from the type of, I guess, cults or religions, groups that we react to. This guy, Lou, he is something else, and it's hard to even understand how he got to where he was. We have our theories, but we will kind of go through this step by step and share some insight into how similar he did things to other people, even though the idea or his belief system was so unique and different from what we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, most of the things that we review or the groups that we see, they're really about spreading and becoming really large.
Yeah.
But because we find out later, if you haven't already seen this, then this is spoilers, like lots of spoilers. So go and watch it and then come back. But he was trying to stay small and under the radar on purpose because he was already a criminal long before this story in particular, the story of Sarah and her family becoming a part of his group ever took place. So because of that, he wasn't out like trying to spread. He was like bringing people in closely in small, tiny groups. So
I hate it when bad guys are smart. He was very careful and very smart with the way he went about doing things.
Yeah.
And obviously that's one of the ways he convinced people to, like Sarah's mom, to follow him and believe in him.
Yeah. This whole story is through the eyes of Sarah, talking about the fact that her mom was always very spiritual, very much into angels, and that there were angels who were watching and protecting people and guardian angels type of thing. So when Lou came into the picture and said that he was an angel who was thousands of years old, he could see the future, as well as the idea that if someone passed away, he could bring people from the other side back. Yeah. So that was already in her mom's worldview, which is important in the aspect of like a lot of people think, oh, well, how could she fall for something like that? But typically, any kind of cult leader is very good at manipulating their beliefs that they already hold dear, right?
Yeah.
Taking things and twisting them. Sam and I have talked so much about, like, even if it's within Mormonism or, I mean, any religion, look at how many people change and twist things in the Bible, change and twist things in the Book of Mormon, and it can mean 5 different things, and there can splinter 5 different groups based on those 5 different meanings.
Yeah, and it's one thing too. They give us a brief overview of the story, like, oh, my mother, Sarah's, shared her story. My mother met Lou and found out that he was this angel, or so he said he was, and believed in him. That's one thing, and we as the viewers are thinking, what kind of crazy is this, and why would anyone believe in him? But these guys are so good at manipulating. It could have been something like, oh, she sees his license plate and it says angel. And so instead of him showing up and saying, hey, I'm here to look for a house, and guess what, I'm an angel, it probably was very organic. And she said, oh, your license plate says angel. I'm just guessing. But a way that they could go about this, who knows? He probably just shares like a little tiny piece of, yeah, actually, angels are very important to me because of something specific, without really giving it away. And then she's probably very interested in, okay, why are angels so important to you? Why is this such a big deal?
Angels are important to her, right? Because they're going to take her own somewhat beliefs and be able to twist it. It's very rare that someone goes just from absolute nothingness and no belief system at all into any type of religious belief.
Right.
Unless they, because of their nothingness, because of their having nothing to believe in before, are searching for something, then they can be drawn in. But like, you're still either people that are typically searching for something, and that's when they are most easily manipulated into whatever someone has to sell.
Yep.
Which in this case was him. So her mom divorces her dad
and
moves I know. And this was sad too.
He convinces Sarah's mom to divorce Sarah's dad, and made her believe that she had a bad relationship with him, even though Sarah says, I never saw any signs of a bad relationship between my parents.
Well, and I think we'll never know, right? Because of what ends up happening to Sarah's mom, we'll never know truly what that manipulation level was. Was he saying that he saw the future and she needed to get out of it? Was it, oh, things aren't good at home, are they? And trying to like nitpick little things, because there's always little things in every marriage.
Yeah.
We'll never know the exact manipulation tactics he used, but Sarah's mom did end up taking her and her two daughters, Sarah and I think it was Mandy, and moved to Kansas with Lou. And then here, they basically create a very small compound. Again, he's trying to fly under the radar. So he's not trying to recruit like a ton of people. She said there was like 12 people in the house. They felt like a family. Everything was all just very communal, everything we needed. Lou was buying everything in cash. He had the nice cars, tons of Corvettes, all with the license plates that said Angel, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the first questions we had is where is he getting all of this money? Like, how is this?
Yeah.
He's not working. He's just traveling around, meeting new people
And controlling all the people that live under his roof.
Right. And while he's traveling to different states, he has these people that have been following him. Is it Patricia? That had been following him for a very, very long time, it sounds like. And Patricia was in the home that Sarah and her mom moved to, and were all living together. She became like a second mom to Sarah, which I understood that. And as the story goes, and we get into more of Patricia's story as well, she was very much it sounds like Sarah looked at her like I would have looked at one of the other mothers in my home, which they become very, very close. They become like a mother to you. And it's very, I mean, yes, I knew who my own mother was, but these other mother figures in my home were very important to me.
Yeah. And as we started watching this, and I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. And I had just barely said to Sam, man, it's nice to see an episode that doesn't involve hurting children. And then just right after, no sooner than me saying that, all of a sudden it flipped to the fact that Lou pulled Sarah aside and said, you're broken. The only way to fix you is for you to have sex with me. And she was 17 years old at the time. And she talked about, not only did he say that, right? Like, so he used two different types of manipulation in this sense. He used the spiritual manipulation of, I can see the future. Yep. I can tell that you're broken. So you have to do this. But then on top of it, I think probably because she was older, especially, he also said, but if you don't do this and you don't do what I ask, I will kill your entire family.
And that is something that so many of these leaders, these bad people that are manipulating people and for money and sex really is what it really comes down to, and control. And they often use fear tactics. For him, it was, I will kill your whole family, which is just obviously, can you imagine 17 years old?
Yeah. Thinking
that if what you do, your next action could kill your entire family. And obviously she was very afraid of him. And he had this way about him that all of his followers knew that he was capable of some pretty bad things just by the way that he presented himself.
Yeah, she said she believed it. She's like, I totally believed that he would if I didn't do what he was told. And later we find out that he was also sexually assaulting her younger sister from the time that she was like 10 up until she was 20, right? So once we heard later about the sister too, I told Sam that I guarantee we kept finding out more and more that it's very likely that he was manipulating for sexual advantage to every single woman that lived in that house, including the ones that were married or whatever, because we find out later that Patricia, the other mom, had been a boyfriend-girlfriend with Lou, even though she was married to Brian, right? So it's like, okay, how many, if he's manipulating Sarah, guarantees obviously he's manipulating, and she's a child, Mandy, both of them are children. And what was he doing to manipulate their mom? What was he doing to manipulate Patricia into who knows the level of sexual abuse that was happening within the house, right?
Right.
So Sarah talks about the fact that then in 2003, so this was only 2 years after they had moved to Kansas, that Patricia died in the pool. And she got a call from her younger sister, Mandy, who is 10 at the time, saying, hey, Patricia's dead. She's in the pool. I can't get her out. I can't get her out. And luckily, there were investigators looking at this man, at Lou, for a while. But this is something that is so common, whether it's a small group or whether it's a very large group like the FLDS or anything like that. Like, whether it's big or small, as things start happening that raise red flags, basically, it's not that law enforcement doesn't want to be able to do anything about it, but this was just like Tony Alamo, just like the FLDS. There is certain things they have to be able to prove it. So this investigator's trying to figure out this whole time, like, okay, this is another death. I need to figure out what's going on. All these accidental deaths keep happening around the same man. He's trying to look up who Lou even is and can't find answers. And there's no proof anywhere that there's anything mischievous going on at all.
Yeah, before Patricia, was it just a plane crash? Or was there other ones? Because there was the plane crash where supposedly his wife and daughter had been killed.
Yeah.
And then we find out later that they actually weren't even related at all, right?
They weren't related at all. In the obituary, it showed him as a brother. But then you find out that they were never related.
But the problem these investigators were having, or one of the problems, is that he was very careful and smart, unfortunately, smart in a bad way. And trying to follow the money trail was almost impossible because he was out buying all of these things, but he was paying cash for everything. So it was very hard to understand where this guy was getting the money from until they start connecting the dots.
Yeah, I mean, cash like in cans? Because that's all I was thinking, like him using cash for everything and things not really being completely in his name.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, so we're used to the idea of tithing happens within a lot of these religious groups, you know, tithing or consecration, the idea of give everything to the community and then I'll take care of you. And that's totally what was happening with Lou, right? It's like, okay, he had all this money. So my first thought went, I wonder if he might not be calling it tithing, but he's saying, I'll take care of you. Like, just give me everything you have and I'll take care of you. And
promising this utopia life that so many people promise.
Yep. So after Patricia's death, the investigators already kind of onto that there's something that might be going on. But then Patricia's husband dies 2.5 years later.
Just accidentally squished by a car.
Yep. He was a mechanic, got squished by a car. And again, their red flags are going, but there's nothing to prove and they can't figure out who Lou is. So then Sarah gets told by Lou, your mom is next. And she's like, no. Like, I don't know. What are you talking about? Goes to her mom and actually has the courage to say something. And her mom says, oh, don't worry about it. Nothing's going to happen. Again, we'll never really know fully where the manipulation, like how it got to the point that it was. But Sarah's mom, Jennifer, did drive head on into a semi-truck and died.
If you believe that an angel, like if Sarah's mom is still in this idea that Lou is an angel,
and can bring her back.
And an angel says to you, the only way that you're going to be saved in the eternities, the only way you're going to be able to be with your daughters forever, the only way this, that, and the other promise is for you to do this one thing, which involves killing yourself. You know, but coming from an angel,
Yep.
I can see how he was able to do that. Now, Jennifer would have had to really believe in Lou as an angel in order to do that, because that is like next level. But you see it happen in so many, like Jonestown, for example. You see people get to this point where they believe so much in their leader that they're willing to do things as extreme as suicide.
Well, and he had already been proven prophetic, right? Which is something that happens quite a bit in a lot of these different groups, is like self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So he predicted that Patricia would die, then she accidentally drowned. He predicted that Jennifer, Sarah's mom, was going to die, and she ended up dying in a car accident, even though it was pretty clear that it wasn't just an accident, but the police ruled it as an accident, which is what really matters to Lou, right?
Yep.
All these things are accidental. Well, after Sarah's mom had died, finally the investigator was like, okay, every 2 years, someone has died that's been in this house. We need to be able to go in and figure out what's going on. We need to find out who this Lou guy is, because they could not get a fingerprint. They could not figure out what's going on. But unfortunately, he's so smart, because they took pictures to him to, I can't remember what they pretended had happened, but they wanted him to look at pictures, right?
Yeah, they had said I think they said something. They were looking for a certain person, and they took pictures of this person to see if he had seen them. And the hope was obviously that he would grab these nice glossy pictures and leave them a nice fingerprint to run and see who he is, because he wasn't in the system. They couldn't find him anywhere in the database. This Lou, whatever his last name was, or what he was pretending to be. But of course, he is this criminal that knew exactly what to look out for. And when they handed him these pictures, he emptied the envelope onto the table and moved them around with his fingernail, never even giving them a partial fingerprint for them to run. So he just, once again, was one step ahead in his carefulness.
Yeah, but once that happened, the agent, the detective, did say they kind of just looked at each other, and Lou knew that his time was coming to a close there, and was like, he's being super careful, and they just kind of looked at each other. And literally the next night, he packed up everything and everyone to move again. And when he did that this time, Sarah said, no, I'm done. I don't want to move. I'm not going to move. I'm staying here. And she was allowed to. Now, even though she was allowed to, she did talk about the fact that he was still trying to control her from afar, trying to control what she did, trying to control who she talked to, that she was still very fearful and scared of him and what he might do. And luckily, over time, she ended up with, who sounds like an awesome boyfriend, who kind of helped her find people to talk to about her trauma and learn that what had happened to her was rape and that it wasn't okay, and be able to see through the smoke screen of what Lou had told her of who he was and everything. So even though that fear was still there, she was able to kind of slowly start coming out of it the longer she was in the real world.
Yeah, the fact that she didn't even realize that what had been done to her was rape and that it was not okay just goes to show you the level of control that he had over her. And I guess you can't blame her for believing in him, since her mom believed in him so much. But I think her eyes were starting to be open when her mom died so mysteriously. I think she was starting to realize, okay, there is something about this guy, and in some way he had a part in my mom dying. So I think that's why she ultimately said, no, I'm not moving. I'm staying here because of what happened to her mom. But yes, the amount of control he had over her to the point that she didn't realize that it was this awful thing that was happening to her. And even once she did start realizing, she still didn't dare say anything about him or turn him in to the authorities.
And that happens all the time in any big or small closed off group, especially if someone's considered like prophetic or a leader, in a spiritual leader in that way. Then people think, well, if he says that it's okay, then it has to be okay. So therefore it can't be abuse. It can't be rape. And then on top of that, like as she's starting to come out, the idea of not willing to prosecute when they leave, that happens all the time, right? So it's definitely a thing. They have to be ready to testify against their perpetrator, which is so, so, so hard when they've been taught to believe that they are physically a leader in the sense that they could hurt their family. They are a religious leader, that you were raised to believe that they were prophetic in some way. So there's just so much fear and control that can still happen even after somebody's left.
Exactly.
But she had an awesome boyfriend who did decide to email the FBI and say, hey, not only did this happen to my girlfriend, but like this is still going on because Lou just moved, right? So the same things he knew were going to be happening somewhere else. He was worried about people's safety, and being able to have that tip ultimately made it possible for Sarah to open up and for the detectives to be able to like try to search deeper, because as they started to searching and trying to find him again, they found that he had changed his name and they had him on security. So they were like, okay, we can finally go after him for identity theft, basically, and fraud that way. And then during the 2 years of, okay, now you're in jail for this identity fraud, now is the chance that we have to build up a case and make sure that people are willing to testify as to what happened to them within the group.
And of course, along with that identity change that he did, and he jumped the border out of the United States into Mexico, fleeing from the authorities, because of sexual abuse to children.
Yep.
That was once again, and of course, when we found that out, we said, of course. It just always comes down to that, and it's just so frustrating. But unfortunately we weren't even surprised
No.
that's what it all started with, and so of course he changed his name, and during that 2-year period that he was in prison, and they were able to look up more information about him. Of course, that's where Sarah's younger sister Mandy really became a huge help to putting him away forever.
Yeah, and they said for Mandy, like at first when the investigators, because when the detectives came 4:00 in the morning to Sarah after saying they had arrested him and they wanted her to spill everything she knew. So she finally did, hesitantly, but her younger sister was not ready to do that at all. And it really took the course of those 2 years of being in the regular world for her to recognize what had really happened to her since she was 10 years old. And then also, the big nail in the coffin for this was the fact that she was willing to testify that Lou had killed Patricia. And then came in and told Mandy at 10 years old, call the police in 10 minutes, tell them this story. So really, she had been a witness and known what had happened and had helped cover up the fact that Lou had murdered, or I should say Danny Perez had murdered Patricia all those years ago. So really was able to put that final nail in the coffin. And he did get 80 years to life.
Yes,
prison.
and then come to find out, of course, all of these deaths that happened were so that he could cash in on their
Life
insurance. And so these millions of dollars were coming to him. And every about 2.5 years, when he started running low, that's when someone else would mysteriously pass away, or someone was murdered again by him to cash out once again. So they were able to connect all of the dots. But yes, having Sarah's younger sister be willing to testify against him, knowing and actually being a witness, an eyewitness of Patricia's death, that was what put it all away. No problems, no questions asked. But the last thing I wanted to point out, during the trial, when Sarah testified, she was still, this reminded me of Warren Jeffs when people were testifying against him, but she was still so afraid of him. He had been so manipulative for so long that there was actually someone that stood, I think it was the prosecutor, stood in front of Sarah so that she didn't have to look him in the eye while testifying against him, because she was still that afraid of him, even though he was in chains and even though he was going to be put in prison forever.
Yeah. So again, just shows you the amount of control. Also, going back to the idea of like the tithing idea, he specifically, when people would die, their life insurance policies didn't go to him, right? Because that would have brought suspicion. He would have had to use his real name, all these type of things. He'd have it go to another one of his followers, and then he'd have access to their accounts, right? And so again, this manipulation of money, he was smart enough to do it in a way that he was just convincing people, so it wouldn't have seemed like as much fraud. Like, yes, he was a fraud to those people, but hey, they died, gave their money to so-and-so. I don't have anything to do with this. But so-and-so is going to give me access to all of their money because they believe I'm a 2,000-year-old prophetic angel.
Yeah. Yeah. I just have to say, thank goodness that there are people out there. I forget his name, the investigator.
Yeah.
But he was one of the most important people in this entire story, because he had a feeling that something was off. And instead of just forgetting about it because it didn't affect him personally, he was willing to push and push and push until eventually he got his answer, because he could tell something was wrong. So thank goodness for people in the world like him, or so many other people that are willing to stand up for what is right and do the right thing, even if it isn't affecting them personally or their own little bubble, I guess.
Yeah. The other big thing that we've seen time and time again, people always ask us, like, how do you help someone that's in those situations? And both Sarah and her little sister were willing to stand up against their perpetrator, willing to stand up against him in court, and just in their own lives be able to get the healing that they needed by people in the world being nice.
Yeah.
For Sarah, it was her boyfriend. For Mandy, over the course of those 2 years, they said just being out in the world. Well, you know what that means? It's being out and about, like around kind people that you realize are good and kind and want to help others in need. So always being that person that is always just kind and loving and showing those people that there's good in the world is the best thing anybody can do.
100%. I can speak for that firsthand, my personal experience in that as well. That is the number one key, is you realize, oh, there's a lot of good people out there, and what I'm dealing with isn't the best thing in this life. It isn't what I have to deal with. It isn't what I'm supposed to deal with. There is a better alternative. So if you're in a bad situation and you're listening to this, please feel free to reach out, ask for help. There are people that would love to help you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for being here with us again, and we look forward to talking with you soon.
Talk to y'all soon.